Hello. I'm going to wait for Lettie to come in. Today, I have a really special guest on Coffee Live. I have Lettie Shumate. Oh, here she is. I'm so excited. I've been listening to her podcast. Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hi. Oh
Hey.
my gosh.
Hey.
I'm so excited to it's so funny. Like after I listen to your voice so much on your podcast that I get to actually talk to you in person.
Yeah, I know. It's always interesting because I do the same thing. And so whenever I see the person's face, I'm like staring at them because I'm just like, oh, you're a real person.
I know. Okay. Yes, I've been listening to your podcast so much, and I'm so excited to have you here today. And I just want to have a conversation with you and hear all about what you're doing, hear all the things that I'm not able to get on your podcast, like your background and how you ended up. I'm so interested how you ended up in that second master's that you just finished.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I'm going to give a tiny introduction. This is Lettie Shumate, and she is a historian, an educator, anti-racism educator, a podcaster. Her podcast is called Sincerely Lettie, and I'm just so grateful for you to spend time with us and to educate our community, because I know how much work goes into what you do.
Yes.
So we appreciate your labor, and I hope, and I will tell everyone throughout and at the end, to make sure you have a Patreon now where they can become members and become part of your learning community. And I encourage everyone to take a look and to join.
Yeah.
So it's kind of dark in my house, but okay. So I'm gonna turn on this light and see if it works. Hold on. See, lives are so funny because you just, oh, that's a little better.
Yeah.
Lives are so weird. The dog barks, like the phone rings, all those things. But anyway, so for those of you joining us, I am Melissa, one of the co-founders of From Privilege to Progress. And what we do here is we continue that conversation that we started in that Starbucks in 2018 when we shared the viral video of the two young gentlemen that were unjustly arrested for doing nothing but not buying a cup of coffee. So we continue that work. We continue the conversation about race and racism. We ask people to be on the path with us, to be educated with us, to learn with us, and to amplify the voices of people of color and Black voices in your network, and to show up in your everyday life. That means speaking up in white spaces, right where you are, dismantling the racist ideas we have all been indoctrinated with since the very beginning of our lives. So we ask white people to do that internal work. And that's really what we're about, having us do the internal work so we can do the external work in our lives. So that's all I'm going to say. I want to hear from you. So yes, this Wanderlust, this will be saved. Absolutely. It will be saved here on our IGTV and on our YouTube page. So Lettie, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to just have you start with telling us just about yourself, how you got started, and then I have lots of questions.
Yeah. So for starters, I hated history growing up. I never liked it at all. It was dumb. I was like,
totally. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. But I liked social studies. Cause I was like, oh, I want to learn about the world and more things no one really talks about. And, but just didn't like history. And so I started liking it when I went to college for undergrad. And I was like, oh, word, there's like more than 7 people in history. Like, oh, okay, there's more than wars and white men and colonizers and all this stuff. So this, and there's more than 3 civil rights activists. Oh my gosh, right?
That wasn't until college, right?
Huh?
You knew all that. That wasn't until college you knew all that.
There
was another actual history.
Yeah, because public school is like so whitewashed. It's so whitewashed. And I went to college, started loving history, loved it so much, got a master's in it. And that program at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington was extremely rigorous and so challenging. They didn't have a PhD program in history. They still don't. And so all the professors poured everything into their master's students. So it was like, hey, it's going to be kind of like a PhD program. You're going to want to die, but it's fine. So I did that, and then actually, and whenever I was in graduate school for history, I did American history, but even with doing that, I had to learn all of it, but also world history too. And then I specialized in Black history, like Black American history, civil rights, Black power, everything, slavery, everything. And graduated. And didn't get the job that I thought I was going to get. I ended up working as a front desk receptionist. I then went to corporate America and worked for a pharmaceutical company. Did not like that. I was also, though, at the time teaching history at a community college in Wilmington, North Carolina on my lunch break. So I would go to work at 7, leave, go teach history, go back to work. Like, I know. It was so much.
It's so much. And it's the hardest job too. I mean, it's so rewarding, but it's the hardest job.
Well, yeah. And then also in order to get experience on your resume, it's like, oh, get the experience, but just kidding, the experience doesn't pay you anything. So it's like you have to like bust your butt to try to get what you need financially, if even. And so, but I've always been someone who tries to see a silver lining in things in my life. I was brought up that way. I was brought up in a Christian household, but whenever I say that, I like to clarify for people that it's not the white supremacist evangelical Christianity that I grew up with. I grew up Black spiritual, Southern Black Baptist. My dad is a minister, but when we grew up, we weren't sat down every day and told, oh, well, you have to read this, you have to do that. No, instead we were learning that Jesus was like a radical, right? We learned that how to treat people, how to stand up for people, how to stand up for justice, what that really looks like, calling out racism. You can do that and still like be a Christian, right? And so that my faith has been a huge component of my life and what I've been able to do, and what I've received without even deserving it necessarily. And I say that because we are put here for a purpose, and we don't. Yeah, I deserve things like what I do now, but what I mean is like the overall big picture. It can get taken away any minute, right? So I left corporate America, left teaching, and then I started working part-time, and I went back to grad school for conflict management because I was like, I'm supposed to be doing something more. There's something more I'm supposed to be doing.
So why conflict management? Why did you do that? I know it's like it's funny how the path ends up somewhere, right?
Yeah. Really, I didn't really know myself. I just felt this pull, and I kept like putting it off. And then finally, January 2018, I was like, all right, I have got to just apply to this program. And so I did. And I got it. And I went into this program thinking like, all right, I'm gonna learn how to navigate conversations better about racism, and not even just that, but just better communication in general. That's really why I wanted to do it. Because I was like, people don't know how to talk about race. They don't know how to have the hard conversations. They don't know like what triggers are. They don't know how to they don't know how like the nervous system works and how the brain works, right? And how like the psychological aspects. So I wanted to just know more. And also because I wanted to be able to do what I want to do. And that is being an anti-racism educator, like having that credential, like having another credential of conflict management and knowing how to facilitate and mediate conversations. And as we know, you got to have a piece of paper to show things.
Exactly. And even the paper, like you said, you get the piece of paper. I was listening to I think it was The Daily. Do you listen to the New York Times The Daily podcast? It was the other day, it was about a woman who had a master's degree, and she was like, I did everything I was supposed to, and I can't get a job, and I'm a temp, and I can't pay my bills. So
yeah, it's rough out here. And so and that's also why people like me who are doing our own thing out here trying to make, but also trying to make a difference. And so yeah, I entered the program. It was nowhere near as rigorous as my master's in history, thank God. But I am so thankful for that program, because I went into it thinking, all right, I'm going to learn tangible things, how to communicate like physically, and how to like deal with body language and all these things, right, that we think about when we think of conflict resolution. But what I really spent like half of the program learning too was how to like internally deal, like what cognitive behavior is, like what intergenerational trauma is, what trauma is in general, and how it's so complex. Like I learned about fight or flight and grounding and all of these things I didn't even expect to learn about. And so that's whenever, it was my my second year in the program, which was my last year. And I was like, this is why I'm in this program. So I can learn how I also need to deal with myself, right? Like I felt seen in some of my classes. And it's because my professors were professors, but they also were actual licensed therapists. And one of them was like an actual psychiatrist. So it was like we would go into class and they would give us these scenarios with clients, anonymously, of course. And it was like a therapy session. It was really hands-on learning how to navigate human behavior. And I'm no expert on it, right? But I definitely know a lot more about that than I did in 2018 going into the program. So it was a blessing in disguise for me to, I mean, I'm in more student debt now because of it, but I'm very glad that I did it. Just because like you don't see people really, I feel like conflict management resolution is a newer field, like with a name to it, right? And right now I'm like, this is what's needed. We absolutely need to know how to do this. So yeah.
That's I'm no expert at that either, and I wish I were, but the whole idea of conflict management and what you said about dealing with it internally is that's something that I've been thinking about a lot when it comes to white people on the path to anti-racism, because we get so many emotions when we're like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad person, and we like get all flustered, and then if we just feel those emotions and we don't understand why we're feeling those emotions, that's when we shut down and we stop the work. So you got to know how to deal with your inner, and please do not, inflict them on anyone else. You got to know how to deal with them internally. So it's conflict management on the outside and on the inside, right?
Yeah. It definitely is. And I'm so glad that, but also it's interesting how things that we do as adults, we start to connect the dots with who we actually have always been too. So like, growing up, I always wanted to know why. Like, why is this like that? Like, well, why, how do I do that? Or like, how do I talk to this person about this? And I think also for me growing up, I didn't really get a lot. Like I was actually more like timid growing up. Believe it or not, people were probably like, "You were timid growing up? What?" Yes, I actually was. Yeah. And
when did that change? I'm so curious. When did that change?
Really, I mean, I would say just general life experiences with college, people, friends, relationships, growing into myself. But really, it changed the most getting my master's in history. I had a professor, Dr. Glenn Harris, who I'm still like in constant communication with. He like changed, like he has such an integral part, or played an integral role in my life. Because when I was getting my master's in history, and granted, I had him in undergrad as well, right? But getting my master's in history, it didn't matter if you had the same professors in undergrad. It's like a different level of we're going to make you not want to like us anymore. And so he would always make me like not just him, but every professor in that department made sure that we knew how to defend ourselves, how to stand flat and actually defend whatever we were saying, not be intimidated, because we would be in 3-hour seminars 3 and 4 nights a week, every week, and having to rebuttal like against professors who already know everything about what we're trying to argue with them about, right? So you just had to learn how to do that. And Dr. Harris always taught me, and he's a really tall Black man. He like floats through the hallways, and he always wanted me to know that I'm a Black woman first. I'm always going to be a Black woman first. I am a historian. I am an educator. I am a racial justice advocate, but I'm Black first. And I have to know that going into conversations, going into any situation, I'm going to have to know how to assert myself. Like, I'm going to have to know that I'm going to have to, like, I'm going to go up against people who want to talk to me and be racist towards me, which I already know as a Black person growing up. But he made me, like, learn how to defend myself, how to speak up, how to, like, think really quick. Like, I would go into his office and we would be talking and I'd read a book or something, because we had to read 25 books a week, it felt like. But I would read and I would be talking to him about it, and he'd be like, so what did you read? And I would tell him, and then he'd be like, no, what did you read? I'm like, yo, bruh, I just told you what I read. And I'm like, what? And I'd be like, yo, I haven't gone to bed. Like, I'm tired. And so he'd be like, no, I want you to articulate to me an argument that was not in that book. And he made me do that kind of stuff. People watching me be like, why would he do that? Because that's how I became the historian that I am. That's how I became the confident, even more into the confident woman that I am. Because also while in grad school, life was happening, you know, relationships and friendships and changes and jobs. And so, yeah, really all that I've done has made me who I am.
And you know what? One of the things that struck me as you were talking is that you said that your professor was a Black man, right? And how many, you know, I'm not just on Instagram, I'm on Twitter all the time, too much social media. But there was a thread going around that was like, when did you have your first Black teacher? And I mean, mine wasn't until grad school.
Wow.
So, I mean, I lived the whitest life until grad school, but that's beside the point. But like for you, like, did you have Black teachers growing up?
Yeah, I had my first Black teacher was Miss Bellamy in first grade, and she was an old school Black woman teacher, and I still till this day when I see her, I run up to her and I hug her every time. She always just pushed me really hard, and even in first grade, like I distinctly remember her teaching me how to color in the lines and how not to mess up, like how to act. Like, so she was a teacher, but she was also very motherly. Like she was just and so I had her, and then though I didn't have another Black teacher. I had a Black teacher in 5th grade, and then 7th grade, and then it wasn't until college.
Yeah. Somebody just said 4th grade. I mean, that's a huge representation in all fields, but in education is a huge problem. And there's a lot of, you know, if any of you guys are on Twitter, there's you know, education Twitter, essentially. You follow enough people in that area, you see that what's going on, and there's a lot there to learn. But that it makes a huge difference. It makes it just a huge difference. I've never had a Black teacher. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I know. I was just reading some of those, but yeah, it's like representation matters. And I feel like people ask, like, well, why don't we have more Black teachers? I mean, I'm near Wilmington, North Carolina, and a big question is, well, why don't we have Black teachers here? And I'm like, well, because the city caters to white people. Like, Black people leave. Like, I went to college at UNCW. I had Black friends that were in college with me at UNCW that are no longer here. They ran away from Wilmington as fast as they could. And so I think also people ask the wrong questions. People are asking like, well, why aren't like more Black teachers in the county and in this district, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, no. You need to be asking like, what are we doing wrong? How are we excluding? Like, how is like, what do we need to do about inclusion? Not about diversity, but inclusion. Like, are we actually doing trainings for implicit bias? What is the city also doing? Not just the school districts, but like, what are the towns and cities? Like, what messages are they sending? Because I know right now, like, whew, it's the opposite of what they think. Because I think people think that because, oh, well, there's job opportunities here, we aren't getting the jobs, right? Like, I know Black people who apply to these jobs, who apply to be teachers, and they do not get the freaking jobs, and they have more credentials than white people, and they're literally not getting these jobs. So I'm like, so mixing with the crap of, well, we would hire. No, you wouldn't. I know people personally who didn't get hired. Like, I know that.
It's 100%. Well, you know the studies that like that they did the one with the same exact resume that had the name was like, you know, John Smith or Dwayne Smith, and it was the literal same exact resume, right? And it was like the huge disparity. And I know the other one that I see going around Twitter a lot is journalism. You know, complaining. You know, there's oh, well, we don't have enough Black journalists in our media organization. They're out there. There's plenty of them out there.
Yeah, they're out there. And I get very, because I've experienced a lot. I've also seen a lot. And so whenever I speak about things, I'm not speaking from, oh, well, I think this. No, I've seen this. I know people who've experienced this. And whenever people, I get so frustrated. I talk about education and teaching and Black teachers, and they're like, oh, well, we just don't know. And I'm like, well, you decided to hire the person who's white, whose dad owns half of your area where you're living, and so you want to have an in all the time, so you're going to hire her so you can get invited to your freaking Christmas party every year, and you're not going to hire the Black man or the Black woman or the woman of color or the man of color who has more experience and more qualifications. Like, so then we need to talk about, like the conversation needs to become more of like, why are we like this? Period. Like, what am I thinking? Like, how is this related to anti-Blackness? Like, how is this perpetuating racism? How is this upholding the white supremacy culture? And that's not to say that people just should get overlooked and just like, oh, well, so you're saying people shouldn't get jobs? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, though, is you have to look at the numbers and you have to accept the fact that this crap happens every single day.
Absolutely.
And it's not fair.
It honestly, you know, like I have a very specific role, I know, in this work that I do. And what it is to ask other white people to look within themselves. It's not our job to go and, you know, advocate for Black people or people of color. It's our job to undo all of that we've been indoctrinated with, to unlearn and learn what our race means in the context of ourselves and society. So if you had a lot of white people who are in the positions of power understanding and deconstructing their biases, then that would open up space.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, yeah. And that's, oh yeah, I might think about all of these things. This can be a whole lot. Yes, right. I can do a whole podcast series.
I know, we can talk. I know. I start feeling about these things. Like I have like a list of stuff I wanted to ask you about, and we haven't even gotten off thing one.
No, please.
Yes. But okay, I want you to talk, but just make sure we cover it. Is I want you to talk about your podcast and how that came about and what your goal is with your podcast. I've listened to I just listened to like 3 episodes today, and I just love it so much.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I started it last year in July, I think it was, or maybe it was August. I forget.
And you're on break now.
Yes, yeah, but I will be back up and running mid next month.
Okay.
So yeah, I decided to take a break, and I actually decided to take a break before George Floyd was murdered.
I noticed.
Yeah, so actually, I'm glad that I did, because I would have just done episodes where I was just cussing the whole time, and that's not okay, because I was just not in a good headspace. But yeah, I started it because I like to talk. And I say that because it used to be a blog, and I tried that, but I was like, people are not going to read a 20-page blog post. Like they're just not. And I have so much to say, and I couldn't get it all. Like I can write. I mean, obviously, I have 2 master's degrees, right? So I can write, but I'm also like, I can write a 40-page blog post in like 2 days. But I'm not, so people kept telling me, like, and they told me this for years, like, Lettie, people listen to you whenever you talk. Like, people actually stop what they're doing and they look at you and they listen. And I'm always just like talking. So I don't even really like pay any attention. And so they're like, you should start a podcast. And so I finally was like, all right, I'll do it. So I started it myself. I Googled everything about how to do it, how to record. I'm not tech savvy at all, like at all. So I was like, what's the easiest thing to do? And so, yeah, it was awkward at first because I was just like in my office, like here at home.
By yourself?
Yeah, just like, okay. But yeah, I really started it because I feel like I have a way that I talk about history and social issues, and I connect the dots. And I don't realize how fast I do it. People all the time tell me, like, you do all of these things with like your brain, and not everyone does that. And I have to remember that. And so I was like, all right, well, let me take this leap of faith and start this podcast. And so I want people to listen and to learn. And everything that I say is not going to be agreeable with people, but I'm also not coming from a place where it's just my opinion. And I'm just saying like whatever I want to say to talk out of my butt. Like, that's not what I'm doing. I really truly see that I have a gift, and I say that in the most humble way, but I also say it because like people have told me that, and so I finally am stepping into that confidence and that purpose even more than I already have, right? And so really for my podcast, I don't really have a goal necessarily, but because the last month and a half, I have blown up on social media, which I'm very happy about because people are willing to learn. And because it's not about me. It's honestly, like, I've done so much for free in the past until recently. And so whenever I was gaining more followers, more people listening to my podcast and looking at the numbers, I was like, whoa. But I was so happy about it. Because people are listening and they are messaging me, and they're telling me that they felt uncomfortable, but they kept listening anyway. They didn't know about that history, but they like want to go tell everyone now. And that's what I've always wanted. Even whenever I was teaching college and I'm teaching freshmen and sophomores, I knew that maybe 2 of them were really like going to retain a lot of what I was trying to teach them as a bigger picture, right? And I remember like each semester I would have 1 or 2 students who would get it. And they would click. And I was like, yes, like I got 2 students.
How did I make that happen? How do I replicate it?
Right. And so, and then I realized like, it's just me being the authentic, genuine person that I am whenever it comes to this stuff. I don't do it for show. I don't do it I don't do it out of a place of pride. Or like self-aggrandizing or anything like that. So that's why whenever people listen to my podcast, I get so overjoyed because there's so much history that's not talked about this way. It's just not. And my ultimate goal is just for people to keep listening, keep doing the work, keep messing up, because you're going to mess up while you're on your anti-racism journey, and share it with people, right? Like if you're homeschooling and you realize like, oh wow, I didn't know about this history that I learned about on Lettie's podcast, I want to do more research about it. Great, that's great. And that's how change happens also. And so yeah, that's my podcast.
So I know you studied like the whole history of Black America essentially, right? So but what would you say is your favorite period? So like, was there one period of time or one specific area that you were like, this is my favorite part?
Man, well, in graduate school, I focused a lot on the Black Panther Party.
Real? I know so little. Educate us.
Yeah, I love them. Like I love the history of the Panthers because there's so much also within the Black Panther Party history that's about Africana studies too.
Yeah.
And man, it's so much more than what people think about them, right? Because there's this narrative of, oh, well, they were just this militant group and they wanted to kill the cops. That's actually the biggest fallacy that they absolutely were not that. Like, I have an
okay, will you give us the, like, I know it's hard because, like, I'm asking you to like give like your master's degree in like 3 minutes, but like, what would you tell somebody about the Black Panther movement so that they could understand the truth?
Yeah, so like the Black Panther Party started to help the Black community, to defend the Black community. And so whenever and also you have to understand that there was an organization called COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program, that was deliberately put in place by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI to deliberately annihilate Black activists. It's written in documentation, you can find it.
Yeah.
And that was what they were supposed to do. And so you also then have them feeding the propaganda and feeding the media and all these things. And so you get these negative ideas about the Panthers, and then you see shootouts, but it's like, they ain't starting those, right? And so the Panthers, though, also had so many programs for like the Black community. They had a food program. They like mobilized for voting. They had like a healthcare like mobilization. Like, there's so much so that the Black community could have the resources that it needed. And they're very misunderstood, I believe. There's a documentary called The Black Power Mixtape.
The Black Power Mixtape.
The Black Power Mixtape. Everyone needs to watch that.
The Black Power Mixtape. I'm watching it tonight.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. A camera crew came from Sweden to America to see what was happening here. And that's also what people think about American history, that it was just America, but the whole world was watching us in so many ways.
Really? That is something like I really never thought of it.
Yeah, like a lot of things. Like, I mean, people talk about Emmett Till a lot, right? And they wonder how he got like which was what he deserved, which was like national attention, but it's also international attention. You had Amnesty International, like, writing stories of what happened. You had European countries publishing articles in their newspapers of what happened to this 14-year-old child in Mississippi. That's how things get the attention, because people need to understand that our country is small. Right. Our country is young, and there were things happening here that were getting international attention. At the same time that we were doing our civil rights movement, like right alongside that was apartheid in Africa. So like there are parallels, right, with global history. And so the Panthers, they were all for like Pacific Islander rights, like so much more with the Black Power movement. Just, it was phenomenal. And I'm so
glad you're telling us this, because this is like, I'm just constantly reading and listening and watching, and that's an area that I haven't touched yet.
Yeah, I love it all. But I love the Panthers. I also love the very specific history. Like I actually just got a book about the war on poverty in Alabama from 64 to 72. Like very specific history that shows you grassroots organizing, ways that the government did not want Black people to progress, like literal policies put into place, written down. And I also love reading about like the Great Migration. I love that, and I feel odd sometimes, not odd. It's a word saying like I love it. I feel like I've had a person before say, why do you love reading about Black pain? And I'm like, it's part of the history. This is American history. This is our history. And it's not just about Black pain to me, because Black history shows resilience. Right. Black history shows strength. It shows resistance. It shows triumph over everything that tried to get us down. Everything. We've been able to excel above and beyond. And
it's so interesting how that narrative not all the narratives get twisted, but it's making me think of, when Juneteenth just passed and all the conversation about Juneteenth, and, people saying like, oh, we're talking about enslavement of people and all this kind of stuff. But we don't talk about how the enslaved people revolted, how they took their power back, right? So
yeah,
it's the same idea, right? Look at it
yeah.
from
No, yeah, you are spot on. Like, that's perfect. Like, you like said a lot just in that little bit that you said, because when people think of resistance, right, even today, they think that, and not all people, many people think resistance is just protesting, right? Like, resistance is something just physical. But I'm like, yeah, but resistance was also whenever you had enslaved women who were knitting quilts on scraps, and they were knitting them, and they had paths to the Underground Railroad on them. That was resistance too. That was a way to freedom. You also had things like the Green Book, and I actually went live last night with the Humanity Archive, and I talked about this, but like the Green Book, there was a movie that came out about it.
Yeah, a White Savior movie.
Yeah.
Wait, wasn't it about the... Right. Yeah, they took the actual story and they turned it into a White Savior story.
Yeah, like they were.
Is that how you saw it, or is that?
Yeah, I didn't even watch the movie whenever it first came out. I was like, no. And then whenever I heard that it won an Academy Award, I immediately said, yeah, they definitely white saviorism that, because for a movie about that to win something, I'm like, okay, they definitely glorified the white person. I watched it last year and I was like sign-on the whole time. I was like, y'all ain't even include like the fear, like the reality of it for Mahershala Ali's character.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's just like, even with the Green Book and with that history, the actual real history, when people think about it, right, they think about, oh, well, there are these places where people could stop and they could eat and they could, that's not, it wasn't like stopping at the Marriott, right? A lot of these.
Can you just rewind? Sorry to interrupt you. Can you just rewind in case people who are watching don't understand what the Green Book was?
Yeah. So the Negro Motorist Green Book is the official name, and then it got changed to the Negro Travelers Green Book. That name changed in 1954, I believe it was. But it was a book that Black people used, and it was created by Victor Hugo Green, and it was the first edition came out in 36, and it was created because Black people were not able to travel safely. They couldn't stop at just any gas station, any restaurant, any place to stay, and so Victor Hugo Green created this book. But the way that he did it too was with the United States Postal Service, because back then mail was delivered via train. And so you had postal men who could come, Black men, because the Postal Service was also what employed a lot of Black men, but they were able to see which places there were. And y'all, these weren't places like just regular looking hotels. These were like people's homes. So like if like a person had a spare room, maybe it was listed in the Green Book as like so-and-so's motel or something, but it was their room in their house. And you had things like, even in like Wilmington, you had places like Germany's Beauty Parlor. And you would think like, oh, it was like an actual salon. No, it was like a house. It was like their kitchen, right? Yeah. So it was very Black culture-esque. It was very community driven. It was very much, we're going to still travel and have fun as best as we can, even though they still face a heck of a lot of danger, and a lot of people weren't making it to their destinations even still. But that was resistance in itself. That book existing was a way to say, screw you, Jim Crow. Like, we're still going to try our best to have the freedom that we're still fighting to have. So, yeah.
Yeah. So just the very act of having the book was resistance, and the act of using it was, all of it was resistance. But we don't hear those stories. Like, just like we don't hear real history, we don't hear those stories.
Right.
I just, for the, like, literally, I mean, like, I'm like way older than you are. And I literally, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, just learned about that book, The People's History.
Yeah.
That Howard Zinn book. And which was written from the perspective of the oppressed instead of because history is written by the oppressors, right? And so, like, I didn't even know that existed, that those stories were told or compiled in any certain way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all have a lot to unlearn and relearn.
Yes, and that's the key to like unlearning. like accepting the fact that what you were told is not correct. And it's like 1/16 of the truth, right? And also knowing that history is not isolated. Right. Nothing that happened is ever isolated. And so, I mean, even like, you think about like, even like the Green Book, like I was just talking about, you would think like, oh, okay, the book just came about, right? No, you had highways that were built. You had railroads that were being constructed. You had all of these new things happening as well that gave rise to cars and mobility. Right. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, but who was building these roads? Who was building the road? Like, who was doing this? And you think of slave labor camps and convict leasing and Black people being stolen to do this work. Like, all the history connects, but the history books don't do that. And so my brain goes 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm like on my mouth is on C, and my brain has gone from C to M, back to H, and all the way to Z and back again. Because history is so much more than the surface level. It is extremely. It is. James Baldwin said this, and I'm not going to say his quote correctly, but and I'm going to try to. I'm going to paraphrase it. But he basically said that American history is more beautiful, and he says some more words, and more dark and more terrible than we ever imagined. And it's true. And matter of fact, I have a James Baldwin quote on my arm, right?
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it says people are trapped in history and history is trapped in them. And he wrote that in 1954.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you have it right on you. I have the words on mine, but it's not James Baldwin.
Yeah, I just wanted it. I want it for my own reminder. And also I love James Baldwin. Love him so much. He's also what helped me get my master's in history. Even though he passed away in 1987, a year before I was born, his words and his writing and the way that he connected things for me in my head that I didn't know that I needed connected, he helped me learn history in a different lens. And like, people are trapped in history. They're trapped in the history that they think is just it. They think just all right, well, this is what I experienced. That's got to be it. Like, that's no. And you're also trapped in the lies that you want to continue to believe. So it's very, very
it's so, I feel the same way like you about history, is that I hated it. And in fact, when I got to I went to Catholic school. Talk about stuff that'll mess with your head, about what's true and what's not true. No offense to anybody who's Catholic, but I didn't like learn any of that. And when I got to college, I went to Catholic college too. And my first history class I took there was like world cultures or something like that. I hated it. Hated. I did not start liking history until literally I was like 45 years old. And now I'm like, oh my God, just give me history. Because all those, like, just listening to you talk about it, I'm so excited because like all those connections and everything is connected. Everything is connected. And it just gives you this sense of feeling like you're part of the larger whole. You're not, we're so individualistic in America, but that's really not true. We're all part of a collective. So like when one of us hurts, we all hurt, and it's all connected. And just the same way our history is so intertwined. And I wish people would be able to like see, I hope that we're getting people through our conversations to be able to see that and get excited about it too. Get excited about, like, aren't you excited about all these things you never knew? Like new knowledge.
Yeah, and I also try to make it kind of personable for people. And I think it's also about the like approach to it, right? I think when we think of history teachers, I personally used to always think of like an older white man, right? Like a boring older white man. So I always thought, and I'm like, no, like history is not monotone and boring and told by people who want to tell you how to live your life their way. Like, no, like, I'm a Black woman. I have tattoos. I listen to all types of things. I cuss up a storm. I love God. And I still will call you, like, out on your racism crap. Like, and I will tell you the real truth about history. Because it's, like, I'm a real person. And, like, like, it's been something that I'm glad of, that I am who I am too, because I just approach people and I just also find a way to weave in the conversation to, like, not captivate them, but, like, get them to talk too, right? I mean, even people that I don't agree with. And granted, I'm going to say this, I do not entertain people and their crap whenever it comes to centering whiteness and white fragility, and I don't know. But, like, if someone were to say things to me that are not correct, I'm going to be like, actually, what you're telling me about the Confederate flag, for example, is wrong. Here's why it's wrong. It was fought over slavery. Like, the Civil War was to enslave my ancestors. And I go into beyond the physical war part. I go deeper into the dehumanization of enslavement and what that really means. And I'll ask people things like, would you want a monument of someone who raped and killed your children sitting in your front yard? Exactly. And they're like, no. All right then. Like, so, like, why do we have better monuments? Like, and so that's whenever the question becomes, so why do you co-sign that? And that's whenever people clam up, because it triggers things in your head where you're like, I don't want to deal with this. I am right. I've been raised like this. And it's like, you have to choose to not hold on to that ignorance and want to release it.
Because it hurts you. It hurts you when you hold on to that ignorance, like that. It's like, what I really believe is that, you know, your race, no matter what your race, even though race is invented, your race living in America is an essential part of your identity as someone within the collective, right? Mm-hmm. And if you ignore and don't understand and don't acknowledge how that fits into the bigger picture, that's going to hurt you inside. It's like anything you don't address inside, right? Right. And it's going to hurt everyone else.
Right. Right. So, that's why, whenever I talk about things too, like, you know, whenever I'm talking about anti-racism and white fragility and these things, I also will make it, I'll try to draw a parallel to another kind of situation that doesn't have to do with that, right? So if people don't want to face what they're being confronted with, and they're like, oh, I am not like that. I don't have white privilege. I don't have this. They get very defensive. I'm like, all right, but, like, why are you getting defensive? If someone tells you something that, like, you're doing at work that's not correct, you're going to be like, oh, all right, what do I need to do to make that better? So then you have to ask yourself, why don't you do that with people? Why are you so defensive as a white person or talking to you about race? And so I'm like, you need to unpack that. Like, you need to unpack that and understand that, like, I'm a whole Black woman. I wish I could wake up every day and know whenever I'm going to experience racism and a microaggression. All right, well, at 9:31, I'm going to experience someone following me around in a store. Like, no, like, we can't do that. And so I've been uncomfortable every day of my life at some point every day. And so you can sit down for a second and deal with yourself and listen and want to learn. I think that's another thing too, is people see change in history and in movements, and because of how history textbooks are, they cram a civil rights movement into 2 pages. So the brain thinks, oh, it was done quickly. No, things take time. No.
But like this, okay, you're going to correct me because you're the historian, but didn't the civil rights movement really started in the 50s, right? In the middle 50s, 54 or something like that? And MLK was assassinated in 68. I mean, like, this was not a short...
Well, no, and then, you know, like the Montgomery bus boycott started December of 1955, and Rosa Parks, that's when Rosa Parks sat down, and then the bus boycott happened immediately, pretty much after that. But also you have to think, a year before that, Brown versus Board of Education happened.
Right.
It took 10 more years to even get a Civil Rights Act. Like, people don't
it's
grasp.
mind-blowing.
Yeah, like they don't grasp that. They don't see and read about the sacrifices people make. They don't read the like FBI files and all of the ways that they tried to kill Black people in that time. They don't understand the grassroots organizing that had to happen. They don't know how many times teenagers would go to a training school that was created kind of like a community thing in Black communities, and you would have a Black person training another Black person about how to react whenever someone puts ketchup in your hair whenever you're protesting. They would hit each other because they were training you how to be resilient to that, how to prepare for that, strategies for that. That's how that stuff happened. People don't know that though, right?
People don't know that.
No, like you see the pictures of like the marches and like Dr. King. And a lot of times white people who want to like look at Dr. King and freeze him in time in 1963
and
which is the whole problem.
And whitewash him too. I mean, like, you know, oh, he was all peace and love.
Yeah.
Right.
And they want to
say
say
he'd be
like
calling your ass out.
Right, exactly. Like they want to say like, oh, he was marching and see, like they're peaceful. And people post pictures of like the Bloody Sunday peaceful march, like with like John Lewis, and I'm like, okay, fast forward 10 minutes and look at how many Black people were beat with bats with nails in them. Like
watch Selma, everyone. Watch Ava's documentary called Selma.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I froze. You're back. Right? Yeah, watch Selma. You'll see it.
Yeah. That's the stuff that where I stop people, and I'm like, nope, stop. No, you are wrong. Because they'll only see part of the history. That it's very similar to like social media today, right? Like you see a person's selfie and you're like, oh look, they're having a great time. That girl could have just cried her eyes out 20 minutes before. She'd go out like
1 minute.
No.
Right?
Yeah. And so that's what history is. History is beyond the pictures people see. And it is the archival research and all of this, but it's also the willingness to want to get to the root of understanding how do we go from where we are right now, right? Yes. Like what happened in the past? Why are we repeating this? What do we need to do better? What do I need to do differently? And that's why anti-racism is so important. It's so critical.
We don't have that much time left. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but you're leading me right into a question that I really want to hear your answer to, is that being a student of history and a historian, what do you think about this moment in the sort of the grand scheme? Do you think like I keep like putting it into context in relation to the civil rights movement, like, oh, well, maybe it's like the blah, blah, blah. But I don't have that. I don't have the historical knowledge that you have. So do you, like, what do you think of this moment in the context of history? And where do you hope or believe it's going to go?
Yeah. So I currently feel very, very hopeful. I will say that I do feel hopeful. Part of me though, still a big part of me still is, and I'm trying to, I mean, I still feel this way, but I'm trying to not move past it, but accept that this is just what's happening. But I'm like, we've been screaming about Black lives for the last like forever. But glad y'all want to join now. I'm not trying to crap on people and whenever I say that, but what I mean is know that this isn't new, right? Like know that Black people getting killed is not new. Ta-Nehisi Coates said in his book Between the World and Me, it's the cameras that are new. And so know that this fight has been happening. It's always happened. It's only evolved. And so right now, I'm glad that people are out here protesting. I really am. I'm glad that more of the protesters too, like, they're starting to see, okay, we need to organize. We need to have demands. We need to have strategy. That's great. I was in Wilmington and I went to a few protests, and even in Wilmington, a leader of the protest is starting to be like, oh, all right, we need to be organized, you know, like we need to. And so there is that. And I also, though, want people to understand that it's much more than just that. It's about voting. It's about identifying the fact that voter suppression is real. And how are you going to help with that?
How about Kentucky, right? Right? Like, we want to comment on Kentucky, that it was the one polling place for what, 800 or 600,000 people?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And that's purposeful. That's purposeful. 100%. That's one purpose. And so, know that it takes legislation change, policy change. It takes laws changing. It takes defunding the freaking police who are out here.
Yes.
Like, it takes doing those things. And it also takes knowing that you have to sacrifice something. You're going to have to give something up, because in history, all the big movements, they affected something financially. Right. Everything. Like Montgomery bus boycott. They didn't ride the bus. So white people weren't getting their freaking money. Right. Like, are you kidding? Like, they were like, whoa, we ain't getting our money though. What we need to do, right? And also other places were like losing businesses, diners, gas stations, like places were losing business. And so know that that also takes time. That it's not going to happen with just this presidential election. People may be feeling, that's another thing, people are probably feeling kind of disheartened about this election and who the nominee is. And I get that. Yeah. But know that that's not a reason to not go out there and vote. Because you have to choose to see the bigger picture. You have to choose to see 4 years down the road. Yes. You have to choose to see that. You have to choose to see the other changes that happen in government because of who sits in that White House. You have to see the Supreme Court justices who could pass away in the next 4 years and their spots that need to be filled. Like, you gotta understand that. You gotta understand how the Supreme Court affects laws with police brutality and LGBTQ rights. Like, you've got to see that, and you have to choose to. And I know stuff sucks. Trust me. I also was side-eyeing Democrats. I was like, what are we doing? Y'all, that's the best y'all got. That's the best y'all can come up with. I know. We ain't gonna get into that, girl. But that's a whole nother hour. Whole other thing. But yeah, I want people to know that what's happening right now is great. But Black Lives Matter is not trendy. So whenever people aren't posting anymore in a month, keep posting. Keep doing the work. Don't just stop because your friends aren't talking about it anymore. Do y'all know how many times I bring up history? Y'all, anybody that knows me, I don't care where I am, I'm going to talk about racism. I'm going to talk about white supremacy. And people be like, she talking about this again. I sure am. I absolutely am. Because this is what my purpose is on this earth. And I know that it is. I've tried to run away from it before, and it keeps chasing me back. It keeps coming back at you. So, yeah. But that's what I feel now. To that we all need. Okay, you just gave us an hour of free labor, and I'm so grateful for that. And I loved meeting you. And I think we should do another one. I think we should plan one for next month or something. Because I have a whole list. I've got this whole list of things. Don't even get to any of it. But I just want everybody who's on here to, if you enjoyed learning from Lettie like I did right now. She has a Patreon. She's got different levels for different budgets. The lowest one starts at $5. I mean, come on, like, how much knowledge you're going to get? But you should get the higher one, because then you get everything. Yeah, and I'm actually about to add three more tiers, actually, to my Patreon. So I'm going to add 3 more tiers this weekend. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm going to add 3 more. One's going to include a book club. So I'm really excited, because I'm just like, I need to do more things. I need to do more stuff. So yeah. You can look. So everybody, please, Lettie is offering you this amazing education. Like, how much are you going to love history when you learn it from Lettie? So you got to go to sincerely.lettie, at sincerely.lettie. That's her Instagram. I will make sure when I post this up that it is on there. And then the link in her bio will take you to the Patreon, and you should follow her.
but take you to the Patreon where you can sign up to learn your history from this wonderful historian.
Yeah, and people can also find my podcast in my link in my bio too. So I have a link for Apple and for Spotify. So yeah.
I listen to it on Apple, but yes, you can get it everywhere, right? So everywhere you get your podcast. But everybody go over there, follow her, link in bio, and you can start to learn from her. And we're going to be looking forward to your podcast coming back up later in the summer. And having you back, if you are willing to do it, I would love to have you.
Yes. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm gonna post this up on our page and also on our YouTube. So tell your friends to watch and learn. And I just thank you. I'm so happy to meet you.
Thank you. This has been great. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
I could talk about it forever.
I know.
All right. Take care of yourself. Get some rest and self-care.
Definitely. Yes. Same to you though.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Lettie. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.